of a Chicago that truly invests in all of its people, a city that's truly safer for everyone by investing in what actually works to prevent crime.
Fox News Alert: voters in Chicago have chosen their next mayor as progressive Brandon Johnson narrowly defeats pro-police candidate Paul Vallas in a race that saw the two candidates with starkly different visions over how to address rising crime. Chicago will now have another mayor who has previously called for the defunding of police.
So what impact will that new mayor have on the Windy City's ongoing crime surge? We're going to speak with Chicago Democratic alderman and former mayoral candidate Raymond Lopez about just what Chicagoans say they're expecting.
We begin, though, with the Fox News Alert. The Taiwanese president, Tsai Ing-wen, meeting right now with House Speaker Kevin McCarthy in Los Angeles as part of her week-long trip to America that has left China threatening to retaliate. Those pictures coming in just moments ago. Hello, I'm John Roberts in Washington. We live to fight another day.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
We'll see how today goes. Good to be with you, John.
It's early.
I'm Jillian Turner, and for Sandra Smith today, this is America Reports. So Taiwan's increasingly close relationship with the U.S. has been a major source of anxiety for Beijing for years now. China called the latest meeting a, quote, provocative move that threatens to derail U.S.-Chinese relations and undermine stability all across the Pacific.
But the Biden administration is firing back, calling the visit in from President Tsai unofficial and warning China not to overreact, likely referring to when President Xi Jinping ordered military exercises around the island last summer after Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited.
Complete coverage starts right now. We got former Defense Secretary Mark Esper coming up on how President Biden should respond to Beijing's volatile moves.
But first, to Fox team coverage from around the globe, our political panel here to react in moments. Plus, Aisha Husni standing by from Taiwan's capital in Taipei, and senior national correspondent William LaJeunesse, who starts us off live at the Reagan Presidential Library in Simi Valley, California. So why did President Tsai, William, make this trip now?
Well, you know, number one, the growing hostility, obviously, here in the U.S. about China. And, of course, they're trying to shore up support for Taiwan, who has had dwindling support around the world. Only 13 nations currently support or recognize Taiwan as an independent nation. But the tension you refer to is playing out here. Behind me, you have pro-Taiwan protesters back there who are obviously saying they're an independent nation. And then across the way here, you have those who are pro-China who say, well, no, you belong to us. Now, President Tsai Ing-wen arrived here just a few moments ago, and as I said, you know, she's here because of that dwindling support, and she's also saying on this 10-day tour, she's been hounded by these pro-China protesters, not just here, but in New York as well. Now, she met with 3 U.S. senators when she was in New York, and now, today, now just meeting with Speaker McCarthy and a bipartisan group of 18 members from Congress. China sees this as a provocation and warns of consequences.
This act seriously violates the One China principle and the provisions of the 3 China-U.S. joint communiques and gravely undermines China's sovereignty and territorial integrity.
Now, in response, China has already initiated live fire drills in the Taiwan Strait. They've crossed into contested waters there, not unlike they did when Speaker Pelosi went last year. U.S. officials say America is not going to be bullied, and Speaker McCarthy does not answer to China, to whom he chooses to speak.
There should be no reason for China to overreact here, and I'll leave it at that.
President Tsai often refers to her job as walking a tightrope, right? Trying to balance her country's security and independence without provoking Beijing. Her visit is also a reminder to the U.S. of Taiwan's critical importance to containing China. And also, they are the first domino in their Indo-Pacific ambitions.
Taiwan is the Berlin of the new Cold War. It's a place where much of the contest may play out. And ideally, we're going to be able to maintain deterrence. That's the importance of the situation we're in now. I don't think that means scaling back our diplomatic engagement with Taiwan, but I do think it means increasing our military presence in the region.
So game plan is, John, I can tell you they're getting very heated right now. Some security has moved in. I can't tell you on air what they're saying, not only because I don't understand Mandarin, but because it's all vulgar. But basically, this shouting match going on. Now, the Speaker and the President are meeting right now. They're going to have a joint statement to the press around noon local, and then the congressional delegation will speak to the press about 2 o'clock. Back to you.
Yeah, China should take note of the fact that pro-Chinese demonstrations are allowed in the United States. They can get boisterous as long as they're peaceful. William Lajeunesse for us at the Reagan Library, Simi Valley. Thank you, Jillian.
More than 10,000 miles away from today's meeting out in Simi Valley, Taiwanese citizens are closely watching all this go down, hoping for a lot more U.S. reassurance. This as Beijing ramps up its military efforts to isolate the island. Team coverage continues now with Aisha Hasni. She joins us live from Taipei, Taiwan. Aisha, China is already forging ahead, taking some pretty significant action.
Hey, good afternoon to you, Jillian. That's exactly right. So just in the last few hours here, Taiwan's defense ministry announced that a Chinese aircraft carrier fleet, so a whole fleet, has now passed through the Bashi Channel. This is just southeast of Taiwan. And what that means is that China has now launched its first West Pacific training exercise. Now, we expected some kind of response to this McCarthy meeting today because a year ago, when former Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited this island, we began to see Chinese jets flying very, very close to this island, even crossing the median line almost every single day. They amped up their military exercises, and we could see even more action later this week. Now, China, of course, as you heard William say, is condemning this meeting between McCarthy and Tsai, and really Tsai's entire transit through the Americas this past week. She's been visiting with a few countries that are still have diplomatic relations with the island. Just about 13 left now in the entire world as China keeps going one by one and picking them off. We've been speaking with folks here in Taipei. They are extremely concerned about a possible invasion, and they are not too confident that the U.S. would actually step in to help.
Do you think America would come and help?
No. No. You see what happened in Europe now. Why we should lie to ourselves, say America will come? I don't think so.
And Jillian, I'm told that some folks here in Taipei are even thinking about immigrating to other countries because they've been watching what's happening in Ukraine very, very closely. But if something were to happen with China, this is an island. They would not be able to flee like those refugees we saw did in Ukraine last year. So they're already thinking and planning ahead about moving now. Jillian?
Very telling comment from that woman you spoke to a short time ago. Aisha, thank you. John?
That really was the money soundbite, as it were. Let's bring in our panel. Juan Williams, Fox News senior political analyst, and Mark Thiessen, former White House speechwriter for President Bush and also a Fox News contributor. Juan, let's start you off with that comment that the woman made to Aisha Hasni in Taipei, that there in Taiwan, they don't know that the U.S. will have their backs because, as that woman said, look what's going on in Europe right now. How do you respond?
I think she's exactly right, John. I don't think there's any question. I think that's why the U.S., is taking such a strong stance against Russia. I think that it's seen as really a preview and an indication to China that the United States is going to make the effort to withstand any authoritarian effort to overtake a sovereign nation. And so that's exactly right. Now, where I may disagree with her is what we know so far from President Biden is that he has pledged that he will defend Taiwan. And the effort that we see ongoing in Congress right now to say we're no longer going to have a one China policy may find some resistance from the White House because they're trying to downplay that. This morning in the Wall Street Journal, there's a full-page ad paid for by people like Maurice Greenberg, I think you know some of these names, Ken Langone, the founder of Home Depot, Carla Hill, Fran Townsend, former Bush national security aide, saying let's decrease some of these tensions in the bilateral relationship between China and the U.S. Let's find a way to work this out because we're getting pretty close to a militaristic response.
Yeah, General Mark Miller was saying the same thing. Mark, just before we come to you, let me reiterate via the president himself what it was that Juan just alluded to in terms of Biden ending strategic ambiguity at the White House when he was meeting with Japan's prime minister, saying the U.S. will come to the aid of Taiwan. Listen here.
Are you willing to get involved militarily to defend Taiwan if it comes to that?
Yes.
You are.
That's the commitment we made.
But back to the point that the woman in Taipei was making, Mark, she doesn't trust that the Biden administration will have Taiwan's back because, you know, Juan said we're supporting Ukraine, but I think she was referring to the fact that we didn't tell Putin, don't invade Ukraine and do something to ensure that he didn't. And that's what they're worried about there in Taipei, that we won't send a strong enough message to China to keep them out.
Yeah, she heard President Biden say 4 times that he would defend Taiwan, and she probably also heard White House aides 4 times walk that back. Biden was right the first, second, third, and fourth time. And this is quite frankly, this is why it's so important that we help Ukraine prevail. There's a lot of people on the right are saying we should cut off aid to Ukraine because we need to focus on deterring China. Well, if China looks at Ukraine and says the United States won't spend money to defend a sovereign country, then do they really think that we're going to risk the lives of American troops to defend an island that's not officially a sovereign country? I doubt it. And if we're not willing to spend money, are we going to risk our lives of our forces? It's going to undermine deterrence if we lose in Ukraine. And it's also important to recognize that the reason why Putin invaded Ukraine instead of Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia is because they're NATO allies. They have an Article 5 commitment that if he invaded, the U.S. would have to come in and respond. So the strategic ambiguity calls that into question for Taiwan. If we want to deter a war with China, we need to be absolutely clear that what the consequences would be and say, this is a line you cannot cross. If you do, you'll be at war with the United States, so don't do it, because China doesn't want to go to war with us.
Let's ruminate just a little bit, gentlemen, on the news from yesterday. Juan Williams, your reaction to the Bragg indictment, which has been described by legal analysts on both sides of the political aisle as thin gruel at best.
I don't know about thin gruel, but I think it's thinner than what I had thought might be coming when Bragg decided that initially he was reluctant to bring this case. Then he decides he's going to bring this case. He has these 34 charges, but John, there's got to be an underlying charge that raises it from misdemeanor tax, playing with the tax forms and the financial records, to a felony case. And he didn't reveal what that is. It may come, but so far, you got to think, is this really the strongest case? And I just don't see it as that, no.
Right. Mark, Trey Gowdy put it this way. He said that indictments aren't supposed to be mystery novels, yet this one is.
Yeah, I agree with Juan. And, I don't know a single serious legal scholar on the right or left who thinks that this is a good case. And so these charges wouldn't be brought against anyone but Donald Trump, and only if Donald Trump were eligible for the presidency again. It's clearly political. And what this is doing is this is helping make sure that Donald Trump is the Republican nominee. It's making it more likely, because even Republicans who don't want Donald Trump to be the Republican nominee also don't want our country to be turned into a banana republic where the justice system is weaponized to go after our political opponents. So there's going to be a rallying effect around President Trump, and it's already happening. You see, Jeb Bush is backing Donald Trump. Joe Manchin is backing Donald Trump on this. So, that when you've done that, you've really misfired.
Yeah, and you and Juan both on the same page on this indictment as well. Good to talk to you, gentlemen. Mark, Juan, thanks. Appreciate it. And we'll get the chance to talk a little bit more about this in our next hour when Asa Hutchinson, the latest declared Republican presidential candidate, will be joining us. He has called for Trump to drop out of the race because of his legal problems. Now I wonder if, in the wake of this indictment, he's changed his mind.
He's basically, as I understand it, his case so far has been all the hoopla aside, innocence, conviction, whichever way this goes, it's just too much of a distraction on the campaign trail. That's been his case.
Yeah, but I think
if he pivots now.
I think you're going to see a galvanizing of support behind former President Trump over this.
It'll be interesting, actually, to see if more lawmakers this week actually formally endorse Trump for 2024. Only a handful so far. I think less than 10.
When you have Democrats like Juan Williams and others saying, what is this indictment? That's an issue.
Yeah.
Big issue.
We will be closely tracking it. can tell you that. There's also this. Take a look. The Missouri State Highway Patrol confirms at least 4 deaths and multiple injuries now resulting from the tornado that struck the state's southeast overnight. Dozens of homes you can see there and businesses destroyed in Glen Allen, Missouri, which is about 100 miles south of St. Louis. Forecasters believe the town took a direct hit from an EF2 or EF3 tornado. The severe weather is now pummeling other parts of the Midwest as it marches east, with about 89 million Americans now in its path. Communities from the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley down to the Mid-South could see hail, damaging winds, even more tornadoes. Southern states still recovering from tornadoes last week could be at risk in the direct crosshairs once again. Tornadoes that moved across Arkansas Friday are blamed for at least 5 deaths and a lot of catastrophic damage. Fox Corporation is proud to be a partner of the Red Cross annual disaster giving program. The company so far has donated $1 million to help victims impacted by these recent tornadoes across the South. You can join us by donating right now at redcross.org/FoxForward, or you can scan the QR code that's right there on your screen.
The situation at the southern border continues to spiral out of control with migrants caught in the middle. Authorities finding dozens of migrants crammed into a Texas stash house as Mexican drug cartels cash in on their dreams of coming to America. Robert Almonte is a retired deputy chief of the El Paso Police Department. His reaction coming up next.
Plus, Tennessee House Republicans take steps now to expel 3 Democratic lawmakers who participated in a gun reform rally at the state capitol last week. How the Democrats are now defending their actions and where the process stands on efforts to remove them.
In workplace, you have rules that you break. Sometimes those rules put a letter in your file. Sometimes the rules that you break have you get fired. In this instance, this rises to the level, I believe, of their actions on the House floor to be expelled.